Were you born sometime between 1982 and 1985? You're definitely going to want to watch this video all the way to the end to be able to really understand why life has been or is currently so difficult right now. If you don't know me yet, hi, I'm Naomi Fox Reyna. I'm the founder of Lightfield.co and a light-filled astrology and human design teacher. One of the most powerful experiences that we have here in this life is when we go through transits. Transits are what happens when the planets that are moving in the sky interact with the planets where they were the moment that we took our first breath. And some of these transits feel awesome and give us a boost of confidence and energy and luck. And some of them feel terrible. They bring out our wounds and they push us to the edge, and they can be so incredibly challenging. These were all determined from the moment you took your first breath. And the cycles of life were predetermined, but how we respond to them is not predetermined. While we're not covering all of the transits in this video, I do want to specifically talk about two that are incredibly powerful. And for those born between about 1982 to about 1985, you guys are the super lucky bunch that are going through these at the exact same time. These are Neptune Square Neptune and Pluto Square Pluto. What that means is the moment that you took your first breath, Neptune and Pluto were at a certain part in the chart. And then as time moves on, they move throughout the chart. Your natal placements stay the same, but the planets keep moving. When they move to a 90-degree point, they kind of push on the energy of where they were the moment you were born, creating a square. So when Neptune moves 90 degrees in the chart, that's called Neptune Square Neptune. And when Pluto moves 90 degrees in the chart, that's Pluto Square Pluto. What people can expect to experience through Neptune Square Neptune is an overall feeling of distortion, or like the ground has been moved from beneath your feet. And like you don't know quite which way is up anymore, and like you're completely disoriented across the board. This is a time of serious spiritual up-leveling and upgrades. Your spiritual gifts will amplify and become incredibly magnified. And also, it's a time of profound spiritual illusion, delusion. You could find that there are massive, epic, extravagant illusions that have been laid out before you, and that they are starting to crumble or be disintegrating kind of before your very eyes, so to speak, or before your third eye. This is a very intuitive sort of a transit that doesn't really let off, and not the time to be making major life decisions on the whole. Pluto Square Pluto is going to be the experience of your deepest, darkest secrets coming to life. Think if you had secrets in your life that you buried in the backyard, kind of like the skeletons in the closet or the bodies that are 6 feet under, they're coming up. They're coming out. They are not dead. And it's the idea of your feelings that you buried alive never die. And so if you have a quote unquote secret that you're not good enough, and that you know deep down that you're not good enough, but you buried it like a secret, that's what's going to come up to be explored. Or if you have like a classic secret, like something terrible that's happened, like having an affair, or you committed a crime years and years ago, something where you've been actively trying to keep a secret buried, family secrets, all these types of things, this is what is coming up and out. And so each of these transits independently is incredibly profoundly difficult. And then combined, this is a whole other level of things being rearranged and redistributed in your life that is a very loving universe and is absolutely soul contracts that you agreed to many years ago. Effectively, as your consciousness created your life path, you chose into this. And I believe that that is so important to acknowledge and be aware of and to believe and claim, because you are not a victim and this is not happening to you. This is something that on a soul growth level, you opted into. This is something that only happens once out of the 248-year cycle of Pluto. There's a 20-year window within that 200 and nearly 50-year cycle, and you happen to be born right at the time when this was happening just for you. So if it's felt like it's too big and it's too overwhelming, it's because it is. This is quintessentially the concept of this is bigger than you, this is overpowering you, it is too much, and there is a very loving God, a loving universe that is here for you, and that you don't have to do this on your own. This is the exact very challenge that you need to be able to surrender and allow and just release the need to control everything and let everything be rearranged for you. And as the secrets come up and as the illusions reveal themselves, you just keep moving with it and you just keep breathing, because on the other side of this is such profound growth. You can hardly even imagine. It's going to be so worth it. It already is. You're doing amazing. Keep going. For the bulk of history, this has been a transit that would be experienced in succession, meaning Neptune Square Neptune, and then some number of years later, Pluto Square Pluto. But there's a very unique thing that happened about 45 years ago that is worth looking at, and that is that from February of 1979 until February of 1999, Pluto came inside of the orbit of Neptune, creating a really interesting sextile relationship where Pluto and Neptune have been traveling at about the same pace from the sun since about World War II until the year 2030. So what that means is if you pull a natal chart from anybody born around the time of World War II until around the time of 2030, you will see that Pluto and Neptune are in a sextile relationship or about 60 degrees away from each other, traveling at nearly the same speed through all of those years. If you were born inside of this window from February 1979 to February 1999, you were born with the very unique window of time that Pluto was closer to the sun than Neptune, which I think has some really interesting significance around who you are and how you're here to express things, and what that says about your willingness to look at the dark things and what is further out that normally isn't for other people. Very fascinating to explore that one piece. But in today's video, we are specifically focusing on those that are currently experiencing not only their Neptune Square Neptune, but also their Pluto Square Pluto at the exact same time. Currently, at the time of recording this, Neptune is at 28 degrees of Pisces and Pluto is at 29 degrees of Capricorn. That means 90 degrees before that would be anybody who has Neptune in their natal chart from 26 degrees Sagittarius until about 1 degree of Capricorn. And then if you have Pluto in your natal chart anywhere from 27 degrees of Libra to 1 degree of Scorpio, you are experiencing both of these simultaneously. This is going to be the bulk of people born between 1983 and 1984, and some of you who were born in 1982 or 1985 will be experiencing this as well. Let's look at some chart examples of this. We're going to take a look at 4 different charts. We're going to start with this one and then look at others. But first, before we dive into the specifics of this chart, I just want to orient you to what a transit chart looks like. So in this one, we have the inner wheel and the outer wheel. The inner wheel is the natal chart, the natal planets for the person that we're looking at. This is where all the planets were the moment that this person was born. And then the outer wheel is where all the planets are at the time that I looked up this chart, which is on September 5th when I was prepping for this video and gathering all of the charts that I needed. So we're going to be focusing on Neptune and Pluto since we're looking at the transits of Neptune Square Neptune and Pluto Square Pluto. So MH is a Capricorn. She's born in 1983 in the middle of January. And you can see, if you look at her chart for a minute in the inner wheel, you can see the sun is at 24 degrees of Capricorn, and you can kind of see the layout. And if you sat with this for a minute and you knew how to read a natal chart, you would start to get an idea of her personality and strengths and the things that kind of can cause a problem or be bumpy and things of that nature. So let's start by looking at what she might be going through right now. So we can see here that her Neptune is at 27 degrees 44 minutes of Sagittarius. And we can see on the outside wheel that Neptune that's transiting is 28 degrees and 55 minutes. And since the text is in red, we can see that that Neptune is currently in retrograde. And so 28 degrees 55 minutes of Pisces is just over a 90 degree angle to 27 degrees and 44 minutes of Sagittarius. So, since we know that Neptune is going back into this point, we know Neptune is retrograding, it's returning. Neptune is returning to this point. So she's been in this for a while and she's at the tail end of this Neptune Square Neptune. She's kind of in that last push, that last squeeze as Neptune is moving back lower in degrees for a little while and then will turn forward again after a certain amount of time. And then she will be absolutely done with this transit, but it's probably been going on for about a year and a half. And then we can see Pluto, her natal Pluto is at 29 degrees, 26 minutes of Libra. And currently Pluto is at 29 degrees, 56 minutes of Capricorn. So she is super duper in that last little squeeze of it. And Pluto is only coming about a half a degree back into Capricorn this time and then moving forward. So she's also on the other side and almost done with this Pluto Square Pluto transit. And so she has had a really, really intensive last couple of years, no doubt about it, because both Pluto and Neptune not only move very slow, but they've been moving at a similar rate. And so overall, these transit started probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago, because that's how long it takes for them to fully clear this stretch. So we're dealing with something called an orb. An orb is how much distance from an exact point that something needs to be in order to still have an impact. So when you're dealing with Pluto Square Pluto and Neptune Square Neptune, I'm very conservative with my orbs. I would say within 2 degrees you're going to be feeling it, and 3 degrees you'll notice a difference, but definitely within 2 degrees, for sure within 1 degree. And definitely at that exact point. Like right now we have Pluto and Pluto are both at 29 degrees, Capricorn and Libra. And then with Neptune being 27 degrees, 44 minutes Sag, and then 28:55, that's just over 1 degree difference. So these are still both extremely, extremely strong. But as Pluto and Neptune they complete their retrograde and they move forward, they'll let off of this energy for her and continue to kind of go about their business and move further and further away from these exact points. Now, to take a second and look at the other things that are going on in this chart. If you know much about astrology, you've probably been like, wow, there's some other things going on. So we have Pluto is finishing this experience, but if you look at where Pluto is, Pluto just recently went over this 24-degree sun, like in the last several years, and then her 27-degree Mercury. So she's really truly been in it. Anytime you have Pluto going like conjunct exact across the sun of somebody's natal sun, that is another 1 to 2 solid year experience. So she's had this like back to back to back experience going on. And then she's got her moon, which is at 1 degree of Aquarius. And so Pluto has already traveled all the way to 2 degrees of Aquarius while going through, starting his journey into Aquarius and now retrograding back into Capricorn. So she's not only experiencing these 2 very powerful transits right now, but she's also got this super duper potent Pluto transiting her moon. So she's really not getting much of a quote unquote break. But what is happening is a tremendous amount of soul growth. My guess is that she has gone through just unspeakable levels of internal transformation. And it nearly makes me want to cry because I can appreciate how powerful that Pluto's work is. Pluto is the energy of total death and destruction, like incineration, like everything is gone and then it's dust for a long time. And then at some point after that, usually not very quickly, there is a resurrection. There is a phoenix bursting out of the ashes in flames and coming back more powerful than ever. But what she's been going through is really, really significant. So if you have any of these things going on, if you're a Capricorn and you're kind of closer to the end of Capricorn, or if you have a significant placement at the very, very beginning of Aquarius, Pluto is rocking right on top of that. And then I'm sure we'll see some other things in these other charts, but that's just a very brief glimpse of what this person is probably experiencing that has been soul consuming and totally has turned her inside out. So if you're watching this, listening to it, say a little prayer and send it out to MH. Definitely, she's in need of it. The next one that we want to look at is for HW. So she was born in September of 1983, and we can see that her sun is just barely into Libra. We can see that hanging out there in the 12th house, and that her Neptune, natal Neptune, is at 26 degrees and 33 minutes. And the transiting Neptune is at 28:55. So she is also on the other side of this, that this is something that Neptune is kind of just about done with this progress. And what's so interesting is the last chart we just looked at, Neptune was further along, even though this is later. This is later in that same year. Neptune had retrograded back quite a distance. So you can start to get a feel that the planets don't always just forever and ever move forward. We know about retrogrades, but what happens is it can redistribute these outer planets, where somebody who was born in January would have a natal Neptune at 27 degrees, and then somebody born all the way later that year in September, it's a full degree before that, even though they are both direct. So Neptune clearly went retrograde for a while and then was back on a forward path by the time that September rolled around 1983. And so she's pretty much like, she's out of that 2-degree orb, we can see, because 26 degrees 33 minutes is more than 2 degrees away from a 90-degree angle to 28 degrees 55 minutes of Sagittarius and Pisces. And so she's still kind of feeling it, but it sounds like she's getting a bit of an alleviation point at this particular transit. But let's take a look at Pluto. So her natal Pluto is at 28 degrees 24 minutes, and transiting Pluto is at 29:56. So she is also on the other side of this, but because there's only about 1.5 degrees in this orb, she still is in the squeeze of it. But since Pluto is only going 0.5 degree back into Capricorn before he stations direct and goes back into Aquarius, she is fully on the other side of all the exact points. So this is a bit of a breathing time for her, where it's kind of moving back in. She can almost feel like the energy of it, like breathing on her neck, so to speak. But she really is fully on the other side of this. Now, as Pluto moves into Aquarius, if you look, there's a really close conjunction between Pluto and her Saturn here at 3 degrees of Scorpio. So as Pluto moves into Aquarius, Pluto will be squaring her Saturn, which isn't probably going to be as intense of an experience, but it definitely will feel very strong and will be like another refinement that will kind of be this overpowering sort of tension. Pluto is power, and so when Pluto aspects an inner planet, especially in a square, it feels very overpowering around the area of her life of self-discipline and the thing that she's here to master, because that's what Saturn is. Additionally, we can see it's been a minute, but Uranus up here just over top of the moon, they're both in Taurus. A couple of years ago, Uranus was transiting across her moon, and so that probably would have taken about 8 to 14 months or so, just depending on retrogrades and the timing of Uranus transiting across her moon, creating a very potent experience of really feeling a complete stirring of her entire inner world, her emotions, probably very destabilizing. And with it being in her 8th house, that would have been super powerful around generational things, stuff that she's inherited, physical things, emotional things, energetic things, positive and negative. Neither of these are inherently negative transits, but just very powerful around just overall feeling like there is a lack of being able to hold on to the neatly arranged life that you had set, especially for a Taurus moon. So anybody who has a Taurus moon, just be aware that at some point Uranus recently, and I mean recently, like in the last 10 years or so, has gone across your moon, or will soon, as Uranus is almost done with his journey through Taurus, but definitely has been shaking up all the Taurus energy. So that's something that she went through kind of recently. And one last thing that HW is going through, if you look at Saturn, transiting Saturn is at 16 degrees, is exactly opposite at 16 degrees, her natal Mercury. So there is this pushing, this opposition, this contrast that's really strong around Saturn, which is the one that governs the area that we need to be the most disciplined about. It's very diligent around long-term plans and doing what we said we would do, and integrity and timing and karma is having this oppositional kind of slow transit to her natal Mercury, which is communication and her mind and what she thinks about and just that whole mental acuity and so she's probably going through a really powerful time of having the universe kind of like waves breaking is what it looks like breaking against a cliff of having the opportunity to really evaluate her thinking and really take a second look at it. Communication may be a little difficult for her right now and has been for a while, but pretty soon Saturn is going to move direct and be completely clear of this, but it's probably been really challenging for the last several months there. A positive thing that she's got going on right now, Mercury is conjunct her natal Venus. This is probably bringing a lot of communication and aliveness and all of these things to her area of self-worth and intimacy and connection. So it's not like all the transits are bad. I definitely don't ever want to give that impression, but it can be so helpful to just feel like, oh, there is a reason why everything is so challenging. I chose into this and it's not going to last forever. So now let's jump ahead to June of 1984 and check out AA's chart. So with this particular chart, we can see that she's a Cancer, and we can see her Cancer sun up there in the 11th house. Anytime I look at a chart, my eye automatically goes to like, where's the sun? Who am I looking at? Start to connect a little bit more with who this person is. And let's look at her natal Neptune is at 29 degrees 57 minutes, and transiting Neptune is at 28:55. So she is super duper still in it. Neptune has already gone up to 29 degrees, but has retrograded back to 28 and is going to progress a little bit further down in the numbers and then move up and across, and is going to have another contact point with her exact 90-degree angle. So she's very much in the middle of it. It's not over. It's going to be a minute before she has that kind of alleviation point. And so her spiritual gifts are probably really amplifying, but it's hard to kind of get your feet underneath of you on this one to be able to feel it or to perceive it more accurately. And Pluto is super duper in that square, but isn't going to come all the way to that exact point, because Pluto's only going about a half a degree back into Capricorn, and her natal Pluto is more than a half a degree back into Libra. And what's very interesting, and we haven't discussed this with the other charts, but the 29th degree of any sign is called a critical degree. This is because there's only 30 degrees in a sign. So the 29 degree 59 minute mark is the final degree, and then it switches over to 0 degrees, 0 minutes of the next sign. So when somebody has this 29 degree in their natal chart, it is a culmination. It is a building. It's a concentration of the energy. So AA has a high concentration of that Libra Pluto energy, like that buildup from all of those years that Pluto was transiting through Libra. And this is the final time that Pluto was in Libra, which is similar to right now. This is the final time that Pluto is in Capricorn, because Pluto first moved into Scorpio in 1983 and then came back in 1984 and then went forward. Similar to what we're experiencing, Pluto first came into Aquarius a while ago and now has transited back into Capricorn, and now is only there for a little bit and then moving forward fully and completely. So this is like an echo of the energy of when she was born, and it's very potent. It's extremely heightened. There isn't a lot of a break with it. There isn't, it's just like the volume is turned up more than anything. Something that she's about to experience, though, we've got Jupiter here at 19 degrees of Gemini, is getting pretty close to transiting across her sun. It's still going to be several months before this happens, but that will be a super fun transit. When Jupiter goes across your sun, it's this like everything is great, everything gets lighter, you feel more confident, you have buoyancy, you're more likely to be successful when you're trying a new endeavor. Jupiter is kind of like where you can bet the farm. Like when things are tough, you can look to your natal Jupiter or look to what Jupiter is doing in the chart and allow it to really give that levity and that lift that is kind of just like, oh, thanks so much. I've been waiting for help. And Jupiter just kind of comes along and does that. And even though in this chart it doesn't look like it visually, because sometimes these get a little bit scrunched when there's a lot of placements, Mars is about to transit across her sun sign, which is probably going to give like a huge burst of energy and a forward motion. And so she's got like these two very like high energy things transiting in the house of her sun and about to go across her sun sign. So I'm really hopeful. And then, you know, immediately nearly with Mercury and Venus, boom, 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 she's got this little cluster of the sun sign and Mercury and Venus. This should be a really, really nice lift. I'm super excited for her to experience that. And then finally on the timeline, as we're looking at some of these charts here, we've got HB, who is an October 1984 baby. And so we can see her Libra sun down here in the third house and a whole like little run of planets with her moon way up over here. And so when we go to look at her natal Neptune, we can see it's also at 29 degrees, but is direct, still having that critical degree. And then she is also not quite done with her transit, but very, very close. So right now it's 5 minutes of an orb, like not actual 5 like time minutes on a watch, but 5 astrological minutes, like degrees and minutes when you're measuring the 360 degrees of the entire zodiac. So she is really, really, really feeling this, like super pointed. This is very strong, even though Neptune's going to continue moving away in a retrograde fashion as Neptune continues to go, and then we'll move forward and come back across that 29-degree point of Pisces, which will push on that 90-degree point of 29 degrees of Sagittarius, and then move forward and give her a little bit of a break, but she is still definitely in it. And then her natal Pluto is at 1 degree of Scorpio. So she was born after Pluto had completely fully moved into Scorpio. And so she is kind of more at the beginning of her Pluto Square Pluto, and not really the beginning. She's already been in it because Pluto has already gone all the way to 2 degrees of Aquarius and has now come just back into Capricorn and then will continue to go. So she still is very much in the middle of that as well. And it's going to be a little while, like probably another year before that Pluto Square Pluto has totally and completely shifted out. Some tips if you're going through this, not just for HB, but for everybody and for those that are listening and going through this, or you know somebody who's going through this, definitely share this video with them so that they can be aware as well. But it's almost like you go in with a flashlight, like you're looking for like, okay, what are the things that are gonna surprise me? What are the secrets that I've been hiding? Like, what are the things maybe I've forgotten about that I was trying to run away from, or things like that? You're going actively to do your shadow work. You're actively engaging in opting into this instead of just let it happen to you. That isn't necessarily going to make it easy, but it's going to make it easier because this is something that we all need to go through. And there's nothing wrong with you if it's really hard. It doesn't mean that you've dropped the ball anywhere. It just means that now the energy is open in a way that it never has been before. You've never had this opportunity before to be able to truly access this and to open it up and to give yourself that powerful, deep, deep insight. I hope that this was helpful and that you were able to take a bunch of notes. I'm so delighted you could join me for this. I've been wanting to create this video for a while. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any other questions, if there's other transit videos that you'd be interested in or life experiences, or if you notice something in those charts that I just didn't talk about or you have more questions, I would absolutely love to hear it. And if you don't already like and subscribe, please do that so you can catch more of this and have a beautiful rest of your day. Love you.